I feel like I'm not the best person to represent my country. I have a Latvian passport, I have a Latvian name, and when someone accidentally steps on my foot, they need to step on mine, otherwise we'll end up arguing. That's a common superstition here. I was never patriotic about Latvia, but after living in a couple of different places, I feel like I gained a new perspective. And so, is Riga worth a visit? One of the reasons why you should visit Riga is because of the architecture. I am a big fan of looking at pretty buildings, and Riga has plenty of them. From Gothic to Renaissance, Baroque, wooden architecture, you name it. Because I grew up here, I feel like I often take for granted of how beautiful the city center is. But one of the biggest styles Riga is most known for is Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau is characterized by long, sinuous, organic lines and a lot of use of floral decorations. And just overall, a lot of details on the buildings. Riga has one of the largest concentrations of Art Nouveau architecture in the world, with at least 800 buildings in this style, which is a lot of buildings. And this building is also a museum, which you can go into and look at the interior of Art Nouveau. And one of the most beautiful streets in Riga is considered to be the Alberta Iela, or Alberta Street, which is composed of these buildings. And it looks quite nice. Also that day I found 2 very cute cats hanging around. These guys. I think in general Riga has a lot of stray cats. Maybe not in the city center itself, but in a lot of neighborhoods and outskirts. Usually they're quite skittish, so if you try to pet them, they're probably gonna run away. And we also have a cat on the roof of a building called the cat house. It has actually 2 cats. Another noticeable architectural style stems from Soviet occupation. Since Latvia was part of the USSR, you can see its architectural influence throughout the whole country. The most prominent example of early Soviet architecture is the Academy of Science of Riga, which is very similar looking to the Warsaw Palace of Culture, but I think it's a bit smaller. You'll find many more of these types of buildings, as well as whole districts designed in this style all over Latvia. But they don't have the best image because they often lack quality and inefficient insulation. Speaking of the USSR, one of the reasons you might want to visit Riga is because of its history. While much of Latvians' modern history bears similarities to Estonians and Lithuanians, it has some unique history too. Because of Latvia's strategic location, a lot of people wanted to have it at certain points in history. The major 4 powers were the State of Teutonic Order, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Sweden, and the Russian Empire. So we have a lot of museums displaying the history, the beautiful and the very ugly. The Corner House, the Riga Ghetto and Latvian Holocaust Museum, the Latvian War Museum, and much more. And why I mentioned the USSR before is because you can feel the impact on the country it had, not only architecturally, but also culturally. Because of the occupation by the Soviet Union, we have a significant minority of Russian speakers. And I think in Riga it's quite noticeable. And growing up myself with the mixed background, I sometimes felt like I had to pick sides. I felt like there was a divide between Latvian and Russian speakers, and based on our history, it makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, I just naively wanted people to get along. I didn't want to choose one over the other. I didn't really fully understand the historical weight of these divisions when I was younger, but as an adult, I can see why it's more complex. One of the biggest tensions is the language itself. So let's talk about the Latvian language. If you're planning to visit Riga or Latvia, here are the 3 useful words, which is paldies, labdien, and sveiki, which I think is all you need if you're planning to visit just for a couple of days. The official language in Latvia is Latvian, and I think a lot of people are quite surprised when I tell them that it doesn't really sound like Russian and that it uses a Latin script, which is basically the same as English, but just with way more letters. 33 to be exact. It is not a Slavic language, and even though it has similarities with Lithuanian, unfortunately, when we would talk to each other, we wouldn't really understand one another. So it is very unique and unfortunately not that easy to learn. As a child, I wasn't really that great at any particular subject in school, but Latvian, I think, was one of the worst because I was always on the edge of failing that subject. Mainly because it has so many rules and grammar, and some of the rules don't even make any sense. We have complex word conjunctions and many case systems. It was a nightmare for me, but somehow I managed to make it work and got a decent grade in the end. One thing I do appreciate about Latvian is that you read it as you see it. There are a couple of rules, but most of the time, it's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, Latvian is only spoken mainly in Latvia. But even after my grueling years in school learning this language, I did learn to appreciate how unique it is and how cute sounding it sometimes is. Another reason you might be traveling in general is because of food. And there was a news report or an article that said Latvian cuisine is one of the most boring cuisines in Europe. And well, it might be true. We're a meat and potato kind of country, and we love our gray peas and bacon and rye bread and crispy rye bread and rye bread dessert. So it's it is how it is. There are many places where you can try traditional Latvian food, but my favorite place to go is Lido. Lido is like a bistro where you just pick and choose what you want, and then you sit down and eat it. Usually the portions are quite big, at least for me, so I'm pretty full afterwards. I'm not too sure how Latvians feel about this place, because a lot of people say that back in the day it was better, and well, I kind of agree, because a couple of years ago I got food poisoning, which was not fun, and I think it's because it was the COVID times and they were changing ownership and they might be going bankrupt or were going bankrupt, so they had to make changes to save money. And now I've been there back a couple of times, even though after that incident I didn't feel like going back, but I have been back, and I feel like they brought back my favorite, which is the grilled vegetables that don't look like they were frozen. So yeah, I keep coming back there, and I'm pretty satisfied. One of my favorite things to get there is the tea cocktail. You can only get it during the colder times of the year, and I tried to make it myself, but I don't know what magic they put in there. It is perfect for the cold seasons. Another great place to taste test some Latvian food is the Riga Central Market. It not only has a lot of food, but also some souvenirs you might want to buy. It is considered to be one of the largest markets in Europe, and you can find all types of different restaurants and foods and cuisines throughout Riga with a variety of fanciness levels. We also, I think, have now one Michelin star restaurant, which is pretty impressive. It's probably way too expensive for me to go there, but maybe one day. I might not know the best spots for certain foods in Riga, but I'm an expert when it comes to sweet treats. Like, first of all, we love our baked goods, just like any other European country. And to be quite honest, I feel like I fell out of love for Latvian baked goods for a couple of years now. One of the reasons could be that I was just spoiled with other countries. And then I realized that most of the time when I travel to another country, I pick the fanciest and the best looking bakery, so they have the best baked goods. So it felt unfair to compare a baked good made in a cafe in Sweden that serves very fancy baked goods in general to a cheese bun in Maxima. So I decided to give myself a little treat by going to a really nice cafe in Riga. And I was really glad I did that, because the pastries were really good. And then I also discovered or rediscovered a cinnamon roll made in Rimi that's like 60 cents, and it's so good. It's perfect. It's just so sweet and cinnamony and crunchy, but also soft. It's incredible. If you like cake, I might recommend you to try meduskulka or honey cake. It's like a layered cake with cream. It's very nice. You can also buy it in the supermarket. But a cake that you won't find in any of the cafes is cielaviņa. I think it's one of the most beloved and cherished cakes here, or at least for me and my family. I mean, one of the reasons why it can't really be served is because it's very crumbly and it falls apart quite easily. But it is just very delicious. And if you want to try it, they do sell them in like a big cake form, like as a big cake, but they also sell them as little tubs, little servings, and also as tiny little cupcakes. So if you want to try something that locals adore and not a lot of people talk about, at least outside of Latvia, then cielaviņa is the way to go. And if you don't want this type of cake and you're already in the supermarket, you should also look at sieriņi. Well, honestly, when I describe it to my friends, they are not really amused. It's like a cottage cheese treat, which doesn't really sound appealing at all. I get it. But it's like, it's good. Like, you just have to trust me. They have a lot of different flavors, and you can only eat it kind of cold. So, you know, you can't really bring it back home. And also, I think it's not like specifically a Latvian thing. It's more like a Baltic thing. In the supermarket, I found that each country had its own brand, and all of them are good. And yeah, I would recommend that if you wanna try something new and you love sweet treats. The Latvian brand is Kārums, which I think a lot of people like, but it's the most expensive one out of the three. Like, I am in Latvia. Shouldn't this be cheaper in my country? I don't know. And then we have a lot of sweet treats that you can buy and take back home as little souvenirs. First of all, we have Laima, which is one of the most well-known brands, I think, in Latvia. It has changed ownership. I feel like the quality is not as good as it used to be, but it's hard to tell because it was quite a while back. But I still love Serenade. As a child, I kind of didn't like it. I didn't get why people liked it, but now I'm all for it. You can find it in a box, you can find it in a bar, you can find it in an Excel bar, a chocolate bar, a big chocolate bar. There's so many forms of it. I think the best ones are probably the small candies. Then we have Zephyrs, which is like, I don't know how to describe it really. I usually say it's like a marshmallow, but like a little sour because some of it is made with applesauce. But people are mad at me when I say that, which I don't know how to describe it for people that never tried it. So if you want to try something new, that's a nice little treat. If you're not too sure if you'll like it, you can also try the chocolate covered version one. This is the one that I usually give to my friends because I know that they will most likely like this more. And to any Latvian watching this, I think it got more expensive, and not only that, it now has shrinked. I mean, I like the new packaging, it looks cute, but it feels like there's less of the stuff in there in it. I mean, it says it's a smaller package, but like, I feel like we're getting scammed. I feel like it's more expensive and less product. But some better brands would be Skriveru. You can usually find them in a lot of places by their very colorful packaging. They have some good things. Another one for chocolate would be Pure. It's good quality chocolate. I would recommend. And personally, I'm not a big fan of chips, but Latvians do love chips. So we have a lot of flavors and choices. Oftentimes, I bring the long chips to my friends because those are very interesting. I think you can find them in other countries now too, but I think we made them first. So back off. Another great souvenir that I personally love bringing from other countries is a thrifted item. I recently rediscovered the thrift shops in Riga and they are so nice. I bought this for €1. The thrift shops in general I feel like are reasonably priced, but they also have really good sale days. And that's why I bought this thing for €1. I went crazy on that day. I bought some really good pieces. I think in general thrift shops in Baltic states are pretty good because we have a lot of humanas, which those are typically with reasonable prices. And why I like the thrift shops in Riga is because we have a lot of Humana vintage where you can find a lot of cool stuff. And I almost didn't want to share this so that I can keep it to myself, but also I feel like people should know. When it comes to prices, Riga is relatively affordable. Some articles say that it is very cheap, but I don't think it is necessarily true unless you come from really rich countries. Of course, compared to other capitals like Paris or Oslo, those are probably way more expensive than Riga. But it also depends on like what you're looking for. Maybe accommodation would be cheaper, but the food is kind of similar to German prices. So, you know, potato. The public transport is like $1.50 for 90 minutes. This food that I got from Lido was like 11 something in total, which is like, I don't know, you can decide if it's expensive or cheap. And then this also was like around €5, I think. It depends on your perspective of what is cheap and expensive. I think Latvia was hit by inflation pretty hard, just like a lot of countries, and especially Baltic states. And now our purchasing index is like quite bad, which is like what we earn to what we can buy, which is not that great. Another reason why you might visit Riga is because it's not that crowded. So it's a quite peaceful and nice time to be here. It's rarely really hustling and bustling like Paris is, so you won't feel overwhelmed by other tourists or locals, really. Plus, most things are very nice and walkable from each other. There are some places that are like a bit further than usual, but like you can get everywhere by foot. So that's pretty cool. It's not like Berlin or Warsaw where you have to take the public transport to get from A to B. In Riga, more or less you can get there by foot. Might take a little bit longer, but it's reasonable. So, is Riga worth visiting? I think, in general, yes. I think there's a lot of things to see, to do. I think people who would most enjoy Riga would be history buffs, architecture fans, people looking for a quick city break, and if you in general want to explore the Baltic states. I think in general, Riga is a nice place to visit for a couple days. You can see most things in about 3 days. Some people say that visiting other Baltic capitals is more worth it, which breaks my heart a little bit, but based on the travel blogs that I read for this video, it seems like, or at least it feels like, Riga is the fancier sister of the three. But, you know, you can be the judge of that. Or you can tell me your opinions in the comments. You know, because I'm not the most patriotic about my country, my least favorite question is when people ask me where I'm from. Mainly because sometimes people seem so disappointed and confused when I tell them that I'm from Latvia. They don't really know what and where it is, which I don't fully blame them for. We're a small country and we don't have any big international recognition. Latvia is not as internationally well known as Germany or even Luxembourg. There are a few things that we have recognition for in some areas, like the Art Nouveau architecture, also ice hockey and the Song and Dance Festival. But out of nowhere, a movie about a little black cat came out, winning a Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature and 2 Oscars for Best International Feature Film and Best Animated Feature Film. A lot of my friends and some of my subscribers reached out to me, congratulating me on this win, and I've never felt more proud to be a Latvian. It was not only a win for us, it was a win for Europe, it was a win for small countries, it was a win for indie films and for storytelling. And being in Riga while it was happening, it felt like the whole country was celebrating. We have so many posters and flyers and merch all over the city with this little black cat, just showing love and appreciation for this movie. Nevertheless, I don't know if I'm gonna stay in Latvia or I'm gonna move somewhere else, but I'm happy that I rediscovered some of my lost joys for my country.